Thankfully, my eyes are not taxed. Yes, I knew you didn't see that coming. You can see that she looked at me. Anyway, much furore, much ado about this reformed or revised tax reforms. I thought we were reforming the tax bills. Now we have to revise the reformed tax reform bills. Anyway, that's the conversation we're having now. State governors, at the end of their meeting 2 days ago, endorsed the sharing of the VAT proceeds on the basis of 50% equally, or 50% equality, unchanged from what is currently in operation, 30% derivation, and from the 20% currently in operation, and 60% that was proposed by the Presidential Tax Reform Committee, headed by Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, I beg your pardon. Well, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Mr. Olusegun Okwade joins us in the studio this morning to have conversations around this. He's a chartered accountant and public affairs analyst. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, and good morning to our viewers.
Dr. Olugbenga Adeoye is also with us in the conversation. He joins us virtually. He's a chartered accountant and a tax professional and an international business law expert. Thank you for joining us this morning, Dr. Adeoye.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Well,
Dr. Adeoye, I think you're doing more accounting now than legal.
But so interwoven.
Okay,
both
well,
law and accounting.
Good. Well, that part of you that you don't normally put out is the one we're going to take on this morning, the tax professional part. Then let me report Alero to you. As soon as we got around this morning, the first thing she was asking me is, what's this 50% equality, 30% derivation, 20%? I said, wait, that question is for Dr. Adeoye, not for me. So please, answer her.
Well, I'm really troubled and worried when I read the communique from the Governors Forum, simply because I say that they are making suggestions, but this suggestion is still left with the National Assembly to look into. So, how does this calculation work? Before now, what we had was 50% on equality, 30% on population, and 20% on derivation. Now, what that means is that if you generate 100 billion as VAT in the country, 50%, which is 50 billion, after sharing the VAT to federal takes 15%, local government takes 35%, and then state government takes 50%. This 50% belonging to state government nationwide, you then look at it. If it amounts to 100 billion, based on equality, it means that 50 billion out of the 100 billion will be shared into 37. That is the federating unit, which means 36 states and Abuja. The implication of that is that each state, including FCT, will get 1,351,351,351 naira, equally, regardless of what they have generated.
Okay.
Now you now have population 30%.
Just a second, Dr. Adeoye, just 1 second. Please don't hold your thought on that 30% because I'd like to understand it as well. What's interesting is that this same conversation is going on the platform, at least something similar to it is going on the platform today, and we're going to go live on our DSTV channel right now to that conversation of the Nigerian Economic Outlook 2025, which of course is featuring Dr. Taiwo Oyedele and Mr. Segun Zaccheaus, who is a partner at PwC, having a conversation around Nigeria's economic outlook for the year 2025. And It's a roundtable meeting happening right now on DSTV. We'll be crossing there. But this particular conversation continues for those of you who can't go to that place now, right now on the other platforms of Channels Television. And of course, our social media platform. So back to you, Dr. Adeoye. That 30% thing, does that mean that you get 30% per population?
So how that works is, for example, let's say Alero, Ayo, and myself, 3 of us. So if the population in your house, you have, let's say, 10 children, Alero has 4, and then maybe I have 2. So total 16. So 30% will now be shared in accordance with you 10 over 16 times whatever that 30% is. In my own case, 2 over 16 times whatever that 30% is. And then Alero 4 over 16 times whatever that 30% is. It does not matter whether I contribute the highest.
Wow.
Neither does it matter whether Alero contributed the highest. But if Ayo has 10 children, then Ayo is going to get the highest in terms of population. And that's what the bill at the National Assembly tend to correct and say, look, if population is a true figure, then it means that it will have effect on your derivation. It will have effect on consumption. It will have effect on production. Therefore, let's reduce our emphasis on population. To be fair to all, let us also reduce emphasis on equality so that those that are performing, those that are consuming, those that are generating can have their fair share.
Well, Mr. Okwade, you've heard all of this. Are you as troubled as Dr. Adeoye?
Thank you very much. I'm as troubled. Dr. Adeoye is a very good colleague of mine in both accounting and tax profession.
Oh.
And Taiwo Yedele, a lot of us has been on the path of correcting the narration that we have with the populace about the misconception of what they have at the National Assembly currently. I won't want to bore you with the analysis because not everyone likes the figure as stipulated by Dr. Adeoye. I saw Sister Alero nodding the head when she had 1.3 billion, 300 and something million, 300 and something thousand. She was like, that figure is on the high side. But what we are trying to educate people is to say what the fiscal policy team are suggesting is you must be able to earn better if you contribute to the purse on a better scale. You have the advantage of having more people. And I will take this to the Asian country we all look up to this day, China. I'm sure India, they utilize their population to the advantage for economic development. That we can transfer into the sharing formula of the policy to say, like he said, Ayo has about 10, you have 4, he has 2. You should be able to use to your advantage the 10 members of your family to contribute to the bottom line, as against him having 2. So if we discover that the 10 that you have...
Yes, sorry, Mr. Konde. So because he has 10, he contributes more and therefore receives more. That is the logic that you're talking about.
Of course.
So if you bring more to the table, of course you will get more.
On your own part. So
based on population.
Logic.
Yeah.
But not on productivity.
Yeah, that's the area that tends to correct. So when you have the population, it will transcend more to production.
Productivity.
Expected.
That you will
because that's
produce
the normal
more
thing.
and therefore
You
receive more.
So that on its own can, discourage this idea of saying, should we encourage increase in our population or is actually impacting on us That's the bottom line where we're going. So you have more children, but you are not contributing to the bottom. Then we can come back and say the increase in population has not significantly contribute to the bottom line. So you can come up with a policy that we have in some countries and say you cannot go beyond having 4 children from what we have, because that is the optimal level that we have considered can contribute effectively. And I think this is what the tax reform is trying to address, so that you don't just come on the platter of saying, I have the numbers, I am not contributing. But because you have the yardstick of saying you already have a fixed amount that will come to you, then I should just go on the largest. And that's an area we keep saying that let the National Assembly give this as a country. But you know the beautiful thing I'm actually saying, this is the first time I may be wrong, having the Governor Forum come to speak. Before now, I followed Oyedele, who happens to be a very good friend. And the issue has always been when you engage these stakeholders, suddenly tax has become a discourse everybody is putting their eyes into, but it has never been an area of focus before now. We talk about other oil, agriculture, but every day, there is no day I tune to a station, whether on the radio or on TV, that they are not discussing tax. So it gives relevance to it. But before now, majority of the stakeholders were engaged and they were like, no, we already have what is on ground. But when they saw the thing coming out, everybody starts, giving a reflection of what it is, it should be. For me, I'm worried with this position too, because we cannot continue to encourage increase in population without proportionate increasing the productivity of what you have. Because what that implies is that you can have more children and decide to make them to be unproductive and possibly constitute nuisance to the environment.
Okay, no, Mr. Kwale, is there a chance that this proposition of that's based, the part that's based on population, is there a chance that it could compel the country of Dr. Adeoye, which has 2, to increase their own production and discourage rural urban migration?
Of course. You see, if you look at some of the things we are currently viewing, the population is more in the rural area than the urban setting. And a lot of us have said, at the rural area, you have access to the raw materials that can bring more productivity to the economy. But everybody tends to migrate from that angle to the urban area for white-collar jobs. If you look at the agricultural sector, we should be relying on our population to develop that wing. Is that what we are getting? The answer is no. You allude to the fact that while we are growing up, why is it that a chief wants to have 3, 4, 5 wives and have 20, 30 children? Because he wants to make use of them at the farm, and it's to his advantage when he takes them to the farm to have more proceeds on that path. But reverse is the case as we speak. A lot of people give birth at the rural area where we have proximity to some of the raw materials that can develop our mining, our agriculture and the other side, and tends to migrate to the urban side. So what this will correct, like I said initially, is to look at it to say, is increasing our population to our advantage, or we need to curb some of these things? From our calculation, we can observe that Alaro, who has 4, as against yourself and Doctor, 10-2, seems to optimally contribute to the bottom line. And that might be a benchmark to say within the range of 4 and 5 is the maximum that is expected of you to contribute to the bottom line and give the optimal return for productivity.
Okay. Dr. Adeoye, I don't remember where I saw this video, this data, that Nigeria is growing population-wise at 2% per annum, but Lagos State is growing at 5%. Now, that begs the issue of this whole population thing, and I'm harping on it, so that maybe the pressure on infrastructure at urban parts of Nigeria or urbanized part of Nigeria, more developed parts of Nigeria, would reduce if the governors, with this arrangement or agreement that they now have, can ramp up productivity in their own areas, discourage people from moving from place to place so that they can also create economic activities that will keep people in their localities and also help them to get more. Do you see that happening?
Yes, that's going to happen. Now, if you look at the Governors Forum suggestion from their communique, they have also played down on population. So they say population now, 20%. They now increase derivation by 10% from what it was. But I'll take you back to the data of August 2024. In August 2024, the Federal Inland Revenue reported that the total VAT generated in the country was 444 billion naira. Lagos alone contributed 249.77 out of that. That's about 250 billion. Now, the entire 36 states, 35 states, including FCT, contributed 194 billion. Wow. Now, when you now look at it, we have 10 states in the north. I mean, 10 states, 10, 1 to 10, like number of Alero's children. They contributed 13.69 billion, 10. But those 10 states actually got 59.6 billion. So, what the tax reform bill is addressing, a lot of people do not know, it has addressed population. That is, all things being equal, that the population that you have is supposed to drive production. So we are saying, look, like Mr. Okwade said, you have 10 children. Look, we know that will translate into production. The population of people you have in Lagos is actually part of what is leading to what you get from Lagos. Now we are saying 60% should now be on derivation, regardless of where you are located, your consumption, your production, you are going to benefit from it. And we say, look, let's leave 20% on population and 20% on equality. But the Governors Forum, they are saying, no, equality, 50%. That's more like sharing it equally. What that is going to cause is that if you are expecting that the subnationals, the federating unit, will become very serious, aggressive with production, creating an enabling environment that will allow companies to stay in their domain. And if you think that is going to happen with 50% on equality, it is like the chance of an iceberg in hell. It's not going to happen. Because why do I need to worry myself? My father is now saying, look, Benga, if you like, have 50 children, don't worry about production. We will share whatever we have equally. So somebody else who is contributing largely will receive majorly the same thing, because if 50% goes on equality, we're practically sharing it equally.
Well, and isn't there a justification? 20%. My apologies, Dr. Ali. Isn't there a bit of a justification for that? Because most of the people that add to this economy of a place like Lagos that you mentioned, for instance, most of them are from different parts of the country. So the states are inadvertently contributing to the economy of Lagos through their citizens, through their locals that come here.
No. Well, I disagree completely with that, your position. Now you need to look at the word.
It's not my position, Dr. Day. I'm just asking questions. Just to go ahead, sir.
Yes. If you travel in a particular state in the country at 8 o'clock in the morning, what I would do, just distribute yourself, you and your wife should go to some other state, then the same type of car, buy the same type of fuel, and then go out at 7 o'clock. Do you know, I was asking a question one time. I was on the Ikorodu Road at 5:30 a.m. and I was in traffic. And then I asked myself, do these people sleep in Lagos at all? So the wear and tear on the road, also you have to consider the volume of wastage that will be generated. If you pass through Ojota now, coming from toll gate, even if you wind up the windows of your car, the smell from that dump site can make you to vomit. What that means, Lagos has huge population. And I know Lagos will be thinking of where else do we carry this thing to. So these are factors that you need to consider. Population is not just, to drive revenue alone. It's also a cost center for the governors because you have to maintain law and order, security. The way you secure population of 10 people is not the same way you secure 2 human beings. You understand now? Okay. So yes. The justification is wherever you live. Okay. Now, by the way,
just a second on
why
that.
Would people
I think Mr. Kwade also has something to chip in on that.
Yeah, it's just in response to your question to Doctor. He has said no, because you put more pressure on the infrastructure. Not about everybody coming from different states, and we are now using your state of origin as a contributing factor, saying, okay, that's part of what you should have taken to your state. What we are saying is that, okay, we can equally say, go back to that same state and use your technological skill to generate same in your state, and let those that feel that they are delegations do that. You see, part of the things we've been saying is that if we give room for the new reforms, it will develop. A lot of us can use some of the skills and the knowledge we have back in our state and contribute to the bottom line. As a matter of fact, Lagos will only be possibly a state that will have collaboration with those other states in consuming what they'll be producing. And I'll give you a typical example. Look at during the government of Ambode, there was a synergy between Lagos State and Kebbi to say produce this lake rice, we will consume. Lagos do not have the wherewithal in terms of land, spans of land, and the population. But say you have it, and your land is good for actually, bringing this rice up. And that synergy works. They have the off-takers of what you're actually consuming. Mm-hmm. And before you know it, if that state governor is creative enough, what you will see is that people who are not from Kebbi State, people like me, can decide to go to Kebbi, invest in that state, then I'll be able to address that answer to say, it's not only Lagos, because then I will say, I'm from this part of the state, I'm from Lagos, contributing to Kebbi, then take what it is. So this is what the reform we address. We want a situation where you can use what you have to your advantage, which you are all hanging on. Population. That equity will know, because what that will do, it will create laziness on the part of the leaders to say, whether I work, I do not work, I have this guaranteed. But what we're saying is that your guarantee should be minimal.
Is it not happening already with the sharing, the fact sharing?
Fact sharing.
Yes. There are some states that are not viable if not for fact. They're not producing anything.
And you discover that there are some states that are increasing their IGR on monthly basis in such a way that, look at, I always make Lagos a template to say the tax revenue generation in Lagos, we contribute significantly to their IGR. They've been able to use technology to drive it. And that's why they have a sync with what they have at the federal level. To say you can stay at the comfort of your house and do your return. Currently, the annual return filing, it's on. Do you know there are still some subnationals that you have to go and visit the office physically? Look at the cost of you driving to the tax office and the one you have to stay at the comfort of your house. Time is money. Those periods that you will spend in actually having an interface with someone, technology is solving it for you. So what do you think will generate more? So these are areas we feel that the reform will be able to address, and on the long run, there will be even development, both at the urban, rural. Then you see a lot of people converting from rural to now become an area because people want to, migrate to that area and contribute to develop the state. So I think the creativity will be much more if you allow this to go.
In parentheses, that example that you gave of the lake rice, I'd just like to chip in that Lagos is producing its own rice now.
Yeah, but at Imota.
Imota, that's it.
But I'm sure they get the feeds too from Kebbi. Because I don't think we have the vast land to produce the raw materials input. Okay. You can have the factory. And that's part of what we'll be saying. Lagos might just be like a commercial hub in terms of production. You may not have the resources to set up factories like Lagos will do. But you have the raw materials that will be needed in your factory. So we can have an handshake from you, give us the raw material, we produce, and we sell to as many. I can tell you that what is being produced in Lagos, they can now sell even back to you that you are giving us the raw materials because we have the wherewithal to have the production arm of that particular raw materials.
Okay. Dr. Adeoye, another area that the NGF is looking at is the area of company income tax. And they are saying that there should be no reduction of that.
You see, the Nigerian Governors Forum, we can't say they are totally wrong, neither will I say they are right. The reduction in company income tax was to compensate for the increase in the value-added tax. Value-added tax is meant to be increased by 2.5%. And then we now said, look, let's reduce company income tax by 5% so that people who are paying increased VAT will now have a relief on their bottom line because it's 30% of your net profit that is taxable. Not only that, education tax is to be eliminated, PTF, Naseni, all of these nonsense tax are to be removed with just a single tax called development tax at 3%. So the reduction in company income tax is actually well compensated for by value-added tax increase. So, and it encourages big corporations the more to expand. And I will say this, a lot of people think production is being driven because Lagos was capital before or because this. No. You discussed something this morning when I opened to channels about security. If all the state governors can do something about security, enabling environment, you will see companies trooping to go and establish there. Cattle ranch is better established in the northwestern part of Nigeria. People want to go into that. Milk, cow milk, leather, and the rest. So, first thing, creation of enabling environment, use a pull strategy for people to come to your domain to set up businesses. And by that, pull strategy, you will generate more of value-added tax, and then you will also speak in favor of derivation policy of 60%.
Well, interesting. So now that it will seem, Dr. Adeoye and Mr. Okwande, that things aren't particularly going the way professionals such as yourselves thought. But it would seem that the president doesn't mind, Mr. Okwade. One step is better than no step at all.
Yeah, I would say at least we have a slight shift from the initial submission from the Governors Forum. Initially, they were not listening at all. They feel that should be. Now we have a swap from population being 20 and derivation being 30. What some of us, people like me, have actually said is, okay, well, let's give it a try. And thank God that the fiscal policy team have data to substantiate some of their facts. I listened to them in some of the engagements that we do have that, well, it's not about emotion. You know, at times you come to the table and say, this is what you should look like. No. Do you have facts to substantiate your position? Then we can listen to it. Empirical figures to actually give, you know, backing to what you're actually giving. If, as we speak, because I can tell you for free, a lot of people might not believe. The NGF are very strong and they have their ways of doing their things. If, as we speak, they are able to convince the National Assembly, I would say we've taken a step. Let's give it a try and continue pushing. Maybe in the next 3-4 months, they might have, you know, a rethink. Because we can't say no to all. Initially, they were saying this must actually be abolished. We can't stand. This cannot move on. Now they are having a conversation to say, no, don't reduce the income tax. Part of the things we feel they need to do is those technical advisors to our governors need to give explicit explanation on some of the issues that we're talking about, most especially from the private sector perspective that drives the economy.
Okay. Well, Dr. Adiri, your closing comments on this, but I'd like you to close on how political is this position of the NGF as opposed to developmental or governance?
Oh, it's very political. I mean, clearly it's political. I mean, you just say equality should be maintained at 50%. And then you just do a swap. You push population to 20%, now derivation to 30%. You've not even changed anything, just that 10%. So I would say that Mr. President should use his political heavyweight to discuss with the National Assembly and also the representative of the people. We have 3 senators per state. Thank God we have professionals among them in those National Assembly. They need to look at this. All that is coming from the Governors Forum is actually suggestion.
Okay.
We want it this way. So it's not law, actually. The bill is already with the National Assembly. It's for the technical committee to look at it and say, look, let's go this way, let's go that way. I know they may not want to accept 60% derivation, but I think they should shift it and say, okay, let's push derivation to 50%, and then let's take equality to 30%. That way, we can say, okay, it's enough compromise that we can accept. But leaving equality at 50% will not allow state government to work hard. So, Mr. President have a lot of work to do. The likes of former Speaker of the House of Representatives, he has a lot of his colleagues there. He needs to speak with them. All of us professional, that's what we are also doing here. People need to know that derivation is to the benefit of all the states.
Okay.
So
thank you so much. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your contributions this morning to this conversation. Dr. Olugbenga Adiri is a chartered accountant, tax professional, and an international business law expert, along with Mr. Olusegun Okwade, a chartered accountant and public affairs analyst, and also a tax professional. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having us this morning.
Well, we brought you that information earlier about a missing person whom we are still hoping to get, hoping that we'll be able to get him. 6th January, a man whose picture will come on your screen shortly, visiting his child in Onipanu, Lagos, that's Mr. Moses Unwoye, went missing after leaving home around 5 p.m. Efforts to contact him revealed he was disoriented and unable to describe his location. His last known location, tracked on 15th January, was near 108 Western Avenue, Surulere, Lagos, around the National Stadium. His family has filed a missing persons report and appeals for your help. If you have seen him or have any information about him, please contact the nearest police station or the number on your screen.